Oh, yeah, you're welcome as always. I'm told we're rolling, and my guest is sat there hoping out of shot. Otherwise, what's the point in me giving him a build-up? And we're chatting, while they're getting ready and establishing that, given that we've both been kicking around for some time now, we actually run into each other very rarely. You've heard me on this say, "Oh, I see this person," yet, but I very, very rarely see Andy Parsons. Don't forget, you can hear the full-length, longer version wherever you get your podcasts. Why is it, Andy?
I don't know why that is. I guess we've been on different panel shows at different times, and very rarely have we actually done a panel show together.
How old are you now?
55.
I'm 58.
Yeah.
This is a common theme in these podcasts.
So we have bounced around the same circles for a while. So quite when we would first have encountered each other would have been some time ago.
I think you got going earlier than me, though. I didn't realise that one of your first jobs as a writer was the brilliant Spitting Image.
Yeah.
And when would that have been?
That would have been certainly late 80s, early 90s.
Wow.
So
and you're pretty young. You're in your 20s.
Yeah, very much 20s. So basically came out of university. And
where did you go to university?
I went to Cambridge. And
that's nice. You could have said, I came out of Cambridge. You just said university, very modest.
Well, yeah,
it wasn't Cambridge Polytechnic.
But there's always baggage with Cambridge, isn't there?
Yeah.
So, and I went to a state school in Devon. And before that...
Where in Devon?
I was in Torbay. And before that, I was in state school in Cornwall. So I sort of grew up in the state school system in the southwest. So going to Cambridge was quite a big step up. And, very few kids from my school went to Cambridge or Oxford. And so it was quite exciting. And then to come out of university, having been obviously quite pleased to get up to Oxbridge, then to have everybody, going, "Oh, he's got this privilege this and privilege that," was then it always came as a bit, sort of hurt a little bit, that you'd felt that you'd worked hard in the state school system. And then, it was like the only reason that you were able to do comedy. And as you well know, there's many years of... So when I came out of university, I basically thought, well, if I'm ever going to make any sort of living out of this, I'll have to throw myself into everything. So I started writing, started doing a bit on the stand-up circuit, doing open spots on that, threw myself into various acting auditions as well. And, hoped that you could just scrape a living, And so we started writing. I was with a friend called Henry Naylor.
Yeah.
We started writing non-commission. They had Tuesday weekending, the sort of Radio 4 weekending. There was a non-commission meeting for an hour. And so we turn up to there with a few ideas. And
so we should just say for people, there's always an assumption everybody knows what we're talking about. Weekending, famous show on Radio 4 years and years ago. I think I did voices on it for 2 weeks once when someone was ill. And it was a sort of end of the week review.
And it ran for probably 25 years.
Yeah,
so
long time.
Anybody, probably over 35 or something would have remembered it.
Loads of people came up through it, didn't they?
And it was famous because it had the longest set of credits ever.
Yes,
because everybody got one line on it. Yeah. So the end credits probably took up, the last 2 minutes of the show or what have you. And it was always very exciting if your name was on there because you knew that you'd probably got 12 quid or whatever it might be. And if you could get enough of those 12 quids during the week, then you could make a living. And thankfully, we then got commissioned relatively quickly off that. So we then knew that we were getting...
This is you and Henry together.
Yeah.
So where did you meet Henry?
So I met Henry at university.
Right.
But yeah, so, and we, there was always... The feeling is if you do comedy and you went to Cambridge that you did Footlights. But we actually couldn't get into Footlights. When we first started out, we couldn't do it. So...
what, you tried and they said no?
Well, that's it. There was a little clique, a little public school clique. So we wanted to go up to the Edinburgh Festival and we couldn't get any way of doing it. So the National Student Theatre Company were, I think they were doing their festival in Cambridge that year. So we did a little double act for them. And they said, "No, this is lovely. It's wonderful. We'll love to take you up." And so they actually took us up. So we did 3 years for the NSTC up at doing the double act. And sort of off the back of that, we had a little bit of confidence that maybe we could, rather than doing any sort of 9 to 5 job, we could make it doing some comedy. So, came down to London, and Henry had a bit of private means. His family are sort of northern industrialists. So he had a bit of private means, but I had nothing.
Yeah.
And so I had to do every dirty little job going just to scrape by. And
what sort of things?
Well, I remember doing one. I was doing a sort of week show of Henry, and I was on a building site, sort of eight to probably about 6:30, and then there was no shower at the theatre. I was literally out of the building site straight into the theatre
From 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night doing manual
Yeah,
work.
yeah. I mean, it was early 20s, so I was, these things take, they mean less, don't they? I don't think I could do it now, Rob.
And then you go and do the double act.
Do the double act.
Where's that, on the circuit?
Yeah, well, we did, but I mean, the trouble with doing the circuit with the double act was you never get double money. You'd only get, if you were lucky, you'd get 1.5, but most of the time you'd get exactly the same.
Is that right? I'd never thought of that.
Yeah. And also, a lot of rudimentary clubs only had the one mic. So you'd be trying to do this sort of vaguely sketch show stuff, but you'd be on the one mic, so you'd be moving and moving.
That's never occurred to me, those two things, that the money wouldn't, and the microphone. Yeah.
So then that's, obviously after a period of time of doing that, and then you think, well, we might as well, write the 7 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever you need and do it individually, and we get twice the money and we can go up to Edinburgh together.
And what did you read at university?
I read law at university.
Did you?
Yeah, but I had no interest in law.
So why were you doing that?
Well, because my state school, the art side wasn't very good, and I was advised that probably if I wanted to go to one of the sort of more established universities, shall we say, then I'd probably concentrate on the sciences, because sciences and arts, I was reasonably good at both of them, and they said concentrate on the sciences. But I'd hated all of my science A-levels, so I said I don't want to do science at university. And they said, well, why didn't you do law? Because it's somewhere in between an art and a science. But of course it wasn't. It's, as you well know, somewhere in between, sort of tedious and virtually interminable. So it was basically a means to a degree, and then do something else afterwards.
And then you meet Henry there.
Yeah.
And you form this double act. You're not in the Footlights. You come out.
We did eventually get to do the Footlights.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So Henry stayed on an extra year.
Yeah.
So I did the 3 year. He did a 4-year course and managed to get into Footlights. And so he then got me back after I'd left.
Yeah.
And so I was then doing all these weird odd jobs to try and make ends meet, and he was still there.
So you must have been then living in Cambridge still when you were doing that.
Yes. I think that's right. I think basically there was not the building site I was working on, but there was a building site that they were renovating a building, and I knew somebody who was part of, had some interest in what they were renovating. And so we managed to get it at a completely knocked down rate. And there was no insurance or anything like that. And there was missing half a staircase. So you had to sort of pull yourself up to get up there. But it was a means to an end.
Yeah. Okay. Then you come down. Spitting Image I'm very interested in, because as a voice person, I know the story of that from the performance side of it, but not so much the writing side. So how did that, because Spitting Image was massive, was it not?
Yeah. Well, it was back in the day when there was probably only the 4 TV channels. Yeah. And so we basically got commissioned on weekending, and then a wave of the original writers of Spitting Image had gone.
Yeah.
Had moved on. And so they were looking for some new writers. So they basically looked at the weekend, picked a few scripts out that they liked, and we happened to have written one of those. So they said, come along, and gradually we became one of 6 main writers on the sort of Spitting Image. And because there was only the 4 TV channels, then the audiences were massive, and there wasn't much else to do on a Sunday night at 10 o'clock, if I remember rightly. Maybe some people heading to bed at that point, but other people enjoying, the satire, and obviously the puppets were new, and it was the great thing for us is, in our 20s, we'd be writing something on the Thursday, it would get filmed on the Friday, it would go out on the Sunday, and it would be in the papers on the Monday. And it was a wonderful week. And, you'd be thinking of these ideas on the Wednesday, and you knew that they'd be, recorded on the sort of Friday or Saturday to go out on the Sunday.
How different to writing weekending? What difference did knowing that they were going to be these latex puppets make to writing?
We were given a template, a slightly ironic template, I think, when we started, but it was basically, they've got to be short. 45 seconds is the ideal. People get
Is
bored
that
of the
right?
puppets.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's short, and it's basically 3 lines and then a punchline.
Cool.
And if you can't think of a better punchline, get the puppets to hit each other, because that's always funny. Some sort of slapstick.
Did they
ending.
tell you that?
Yeah. So basically, if they, there was always that some sort of physicality they always enjoyed if you could do that. So obviously, that was the sort of the stereotype spitting image sketch. But if you go back and watch some of them, you'll be amazed how many fit into that category.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And who were the voices? Who were doing the voice when
So
you were on it?
Coogan did some. Alistair did some. Stephen Allen, of course, was there.
Chris Barry?
Chris would have done some, yeah, but because we were the writers, we didn't actually go down to where it was filming very often. So we'd only come across them a few times. But
Kate Robbins.
Kate Robbins would
that.
have been there, yeah.
I auditioned for Spitting Image. Didn't get it.
Well, I mean, you were too busy doing those 2 weeks on weekending. That's what it was. It taking it up.
I just can't fit it in.
Yeah. So, but I mean, there was a variety. I think Hugh Dennis probably did a few.
I think Hugh did. Yeah. He did that as well. And then as it went on, Pete Serafinovich, he was the guy that got it when I was auditioning for it. Okay. I was told I got down to the last 2 with him.
And these are the things that still hold with you, regardless of future success.
You just remember them, don't you? It was because things like that would have been a big thing, and so that could alter the course of your life.
You
your
could
career.
have done the trip, 15 years earlier or whatever.
Yeah. Imagine Steve then doing the trip. Oh God, no, I think it would have been a different show. Very different show. Henry Naylor. I wanted to ask you. Henry was famously Rowan Atkinson's sidekick, Boff, in the Barclaycard adverts. Young people Google them. Big deal at the time when you could make funny adverts.
Very much so, and also from his perspective, financially very, very lucrative.
I was going to come on to that.
And obviously, again, a mismatch between the money that he had and the money that I had. He nice little wedge in his.
That's what I was wanting to come on to.
Yeah.
How did so to explain to people? So they're in a double act. Henry gets these adverts, and the money in adverts, I think then, is probably more than it is now. He would have made a lot of money from those, and it gave him a degree of a profile as well.
Very much so. Yeah, we actually used it very happily for the double act.
You were happy with that?
Goodness me, you use whatever you can, don't you? Absolutely fine.
But there would be some people who wouldn't. Would you agree? There would be not everybody. There are sufficiently large egos around that it could happen that if one person is having these things happen, the other one. But
the advantage of our double act, or everything like that, we used in the show. Right. So all of that, the bitterness, the fake bitterness, because obviously we were very good friends. That we would, all of those things with there's a sketch there. Me getting bitter that you've gone off with Rowan Atkinson, and maybe you'll be forming a double act with him and stuff like that. Yeah. And then of course, from Henry's point of view, as you know, that would it have been Johnny English was sort of based on those adverts.
Yes, it's very much based on those adverts. And he wasn't in them.
He didn't get to do it. He didn't have a high enough profile for them to.
So then the sketches became slightly different.
Exactly. All that time when you were lauding it up, doing the adverts, now the films come out, And of course, the one of the people who got I think probably his role was Ben Miller.
Ben Miller,
who we were at Cambridge with, and who we knew. So and obviously. Had done a bit of Miller and Armstrong and Miller, and that had given him a sufficient profile that Henry didn't have, and therefore, it all comes full circle, doesn't it?
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's very funny. When did you stop working as a partnership, and why?
We got to the stage where we'd done about 6 years on Radio 2. We had our own show on Radio 2. And which was great, and we loved it, and we had a nice little team around us, and really enjoyed doing the shows. And there was always that you were trying to get that to kick on to TV somehow. That we're just trying, and we did about 3 pilots in the end, various different producers, various different exec producers, and there was always we never quite had enough momentum for it to happen. And then we decided that probably a change of agent was good, and the agent wasn't particularly happy, I don't think, and the Radio 2 thing went away, and that was pretty much where we, we'll just let's do our own thing and let's see what what happens. And Henry's now writing plays.
So what did you do when the double act stopped?
So that was pretty much when the time that Mock was starting.
Right.
So that
right.
was
That's great, isn't it? So one thing coming to, and it's so often the case.
Yeah.
And then, oh, hello, there's this other thing just comes
bubbling
into view.
under.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Mock was just coming through, and I think we'd just done the pilot for Mock, or maybe we'd done it the year before. And so that was all kicking off, and then, touring and stuff like that. But yeah, never ever had more fun than when the two of us were writing sketches together, and, just we just make each other howl. And
You can see the difference between touring with a partner, but the thing that I think is hard is touring on your own, because so much of the time you're on your own.
It is true, but one of the memories I do have of us meeting each other, and you can correct me if I've misremembered.
I've no idea what you're going to say. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we were in the Lowry Hotel in Manchester together.
I have been there, yes.
And I think it was Stephen Merchant, you, me, Josh Widdicombe, and I think there was one other. And we all met up.
We were all on tour.
We were all on tour at different venues in Manchester.
Yes.
Well,
that's probably the last time I saw you.
Yeah, may well have been. But yes, and it was a very fun night. I've got very fond memories of it. And one of the conversations I remember fondly having was I was pretty pleased. I seem to remember pretty pleased. I got one of the nice rooms at the Lowry, the junior suite. I don't know where, but Josh being the support for Stephen at the time, it maybe just had a standard double. And then we got talking to you two as to what rooms that you had. And I seem to remember that one of you, I can't quite remember which one, had got a spa, like a hot tub in your room. And he was quite pleased with that. And the other one had got a putting green. And this was, there was clubs left in the room, and there was a whole putting green. And so however good our room was, there was always a room that was slightly better.
Well, that's an example of one of the best things about touring, right? Which is when you run into friends. Either you have friends in that town and they come to the show and you see them after, or if you run into other acts, that's terrific, right?
And even for Edinburgh, I'm up to the Edinburgh Festival. First time I've done the Edinburgh Festival, so I'm doing it this summer.
Well, this is technically what you're here to talk about, Andy. So we should dwell on this.
Well, there's no need to. I'm sure. I'm up to the Pleasance, and I haven't done it for 17 years.
17 years.
17 years since I've been up there doing a full show. And I said, I fancy doing it. My agent's very keen, and I said to my wife, and she said, well, you can't go up for a month. I won't be able to come. So I'm doing the last 2 weeks.
Tell me about the show itself.
The show is called Bafflingly Optimistic.
Which is a reference to?
Well, obviously, all of the things that have gone wrong in the UK in the last few years, not just the UK, obviously, worldwide, a lot of them. But yeah, the struggles that have been going on, whether it's, environmentally or economically or medically, and how there's this idea that we may be all off to hell in a handcart, and actually that there's a different road to be taken, and
is that the road you genuinely see?
I think it is, but you're never quite sure. But yeah, also it's slightly self-interesting that, if you said going to hell in a handcart, it's probably not the feel-good show that people go, well, I've only got one night out, I've got babysitter this month,
Bafflingly optimistic.
Oh, come on, we'll have a bit of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but there is a genuine, I do take it quite low, and it basically pile on all of the, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible. Imagine if you, and various sort of stories thrown in, personal stories, about losing jobs and losing partners and, houses crumbling down, cars being stolen, et cetera, et cetera.
Those are all your personal stories?
A lot of them. You get to this moment where, you sort of, a crumbling house and everything's gone wrong. And then we build the optimism from there. So that we hopefully there's some sort of through line.
So you've gone on the tour, 3 shows a week. How far away from home in terms of hours do you have to be for you to stay in a hotel?
If I'm not working the next night, we'll come back from almost anywhere.
How do you decide on the level of hotel you're willing to spend the money on and how much it eats into the takings for the tour? Peter Kay famously used to, even when he's doing really well, would stay at the sort of Holiday Inn Express.
Yeah.
With no disrespect to Holiday Inn Express,
part
but
of the
Peter
fun
could
of
have
touring
afforded.
is a nice hotel.
Right.
And certainly I'll be, now that I know that there are putting greens and hot tubs, I shall be, It's always nice. But there's always a balance, isn't there? I mean, I often spend, all of the next morning writing or what have you, and it's nice to be writing in a nice hotel and what have you. So it's, I justify it on
writing for the show that you're doing, or for something else.
Sometimes, but often writing other stuff, or something, various bits and pieces to do.
Are you disciplined like that?
I've become more so. I think possibly kids is part of that. You've got to, in the sense that you've got much less time in the day because you've got that much more things to do. So you have to. But really, I found that I could do it. I literally could. If I made myself sit in front of the desk, and I might not feel it, and I might not think it was any good, but actually when I read it back the next day, it would actually be almost as good as when I thought I was writing something quite good.
Chris Martin says that the songs are out there, and he's just got to write them down when they come into his head. They're always flying around.
There are definitely moments, aren't there? There are, you wake up one day and you suddenly, for some reason, it's just there, and you go, "Oh no, that's how I've been trying to work out how I could end this particular routine," and it suddenly just pops in.
Yeah. So, but when these things come, let's say when you leave here today, by something you'll observe something, right? You'll notice, and you go, "Oh yeah, that's a thing." Is it going to your phone? Do you write it down?
I never used to write it down. I always thought that was cheating because you'd have these.
That's not cheating.
No, but you'd have these comics and
but that's not cheating.
And they'd be there and they go, "Oh yeah, that's really good." And
if it's something someone else has said, yeah.
Well, but not so much that it'd be something that they felt they'd said as part of a conversation, but they'd ruin the conversation by going, "Oh no, let's make a note of that now," and that would have killed the conversation. There was no, that was them, and you suddenly took a different edge to it.
Well, I think more and more that when it comes, you've got to write it down because, my God, it flies out, doesn't it?
It
Do you know what I mean?
It does.
How many times have you had that thing where you go, "Oh, there was that time yesterday when I was in that cafe and I thought of this really great thing," and you cannot remember anything of it. You just know it was a lovely, perfect. And
you can maybe remember what the topic was, but you can't remember how it flowed and how it came out at the end.
Yeah, and they often come really nicely formed, don't they? Yeah. Just that first time.
No, there is definitely when all of the the neurons are working and something clicks, and it's certainly if I think maybe if I was desperate and I thought it was absolute gold, then maybe I'd get my phone out and make a little note on the notes.
But you'd have to be desperate. You used the word desperate. Wow, I think a lot of people, they just do that as a matter of course. That's how they do it. They if it's there, if it comes, write it down.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't have notebooks all over the house, but I do have my phone and I can make a note if needs be.
Yeah. How do you come across your ideas?
Please.
Do get in touch.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Do let us know. Andy Parsons thinks it's cheating if he thinks of something and then writes it down.
Not cheating's wrong. If you're on your own, and it's absolutely fine. But if you're
that's what I mean. I don't mean sort of.
But if you're out having a meal with some people and they say, "Oh, terribly sorry, I've just had this idea,"
I would do that. I would have no qualms about doing that.
See, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I thought you were saying if someone else has said something, you go, "Oh, right then." No, but if I was with other people and a thing comes to me and I say something and it gets a laugh.
But if let's say you were with another comic, and you were having a lovely chat, maybe four of you or what have you, and then one of the comics got their notebook out, and every time they thought they'd said something funny, go, "Oh, I'm just going to make a note of that." And there is one of the members of the Cutting Edge was famous for doing this. We'd all go out for a drink afterwards or what have you, and they would get out their notebook, and everybody could have possibly laid some sort of claim.
Oh, I see.
But not saying that they would necessarily lift other people's ideas, but they would take what they thought was their idea from that particular conversation. And it was just a miserable way to socialise.
Yeah, I'm talking more about just going about your daily life and bing, the thing lands. What I'm saying is that if I don't write it down there and then,
I think socially, often you do come up with some lovely ideas that are just lost to the ether, but I just go, that's just life.
You could have been a lawyer after all, Andy. Yeah, that wouldn't have been fun, would it?
It wouldn't have been.
Lovely talking to you. I thought we were going to talk a little bit more when you said about Cornwall and Devon, because my first marriage was in Kingsbridge, so I knew that area. Do you know that area? Or
I do. Yeah, it's very much South Devon.
Devon,
the sailing mecca.
Yes. I was never part of the...
No.
There's Chelsea on Sea, they call it, around there, Salcombe and places like that.
Yeah, Salcombe is, I mean, it's not easy to get to, but it's South Hams. But it's obviously World War II, Slapton Sands.
Slapton, yes. Not many people I meet know about Slapton.
Yeah.
Exactly. Blackpool Sands.
Yeah, very much so.
Remember Howard's End was the Anthony Hopkins, Emma Thompson film.
Yeah.
Was filmed on a slopey garden there where Anthony Hopkins says, I'm sorry about your friend Margaret. I really am, but the poor are poor. That's all that is. Good day to you now. Ah. And he goes indoors. I'm doing Anthony Hopkins.
Lovely. And it's lovely that we've managed to get to the stage where you got to do an impression. So
Isn't it lovely?
Yeah.
There'll be some listeners, Andy, who are looking at their watches going, well, I'm not waiting much longer. If he's not going to do Ronnie Corbett at the very least.
Yeah. No, it wouldn't be one of your podcasts if we hadn't managed to sneak one of them in, would it?
Said with love.
Very much so.
Thank you very much indeed.